Good evening and welcome to I'm Listening Live. We are here to destigmatize and normalize talking about and hearing about mental health because that is how we're all going to get through this. We got a great show planned for you. We have Aluna joining us to talk about her new solo album, Renaissance, as well as David Schoelen, LCSW. Now, I wanted to start the show by talking about staying connected. At the beginning of I'm Listening, I used to remind everyone every single show to make sure they're reaching out to individuals. I want to make sure we are absolutely doing that. September is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. And one of the most important things we can do is stay close and connected. Community is what is going to buffer us and help our mental health thrive in these difficult times. I'm telling everyone to reach out to multiple people every single day, especially people that you haven't heard from. Letting people know that you're there for them is, for many, one of the ways that they build resilience and are more robust and get through mental health struggles. Also reminding all of my clients that right now we're all feeling overly exhausted, often very fragile, a lot of brain fog, and we need to drop the expectations we have on ourselves and others. So I'm reminding people to let go of things that necessarily don't need to be dealt with now, as well as right-sizing things. As I said, everything's feeling amplified and we're feeling very fragile, and some of the things don't have the severity that they seem to feel they have. So we're right-sizing things, letting things go, and of course, reaching out to individuals we care about and staying close and connected. And finally, I have to remind everyone yet again to register to vote. Yes, make sure you are registered. It takes a few moments, and reach out to those in your friends and family, reminding them to also do so. Let's now go to our first guest, Aluna, whose new debut album, Renaissance, has dropped. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. How is your mental health right now through everything that's going on?
You know, it doesn't have any kind of consistency. With each new crazy that gets introduced, there's all this kind of fanfare and like cerebral activity, like, oh my God, what does this mean? And then there's these dips where everything is blah. And you're like, okay, there's no escape from this. I have no way to escape from this. I will just go in a different room to my house.
And that's kind of the way we got to play it these days. You know, I'm still doing my clinical practice, but doing telemedicine. And I'm kind of explaining that to people. They're saying, why is it that I can't count on a certain mood? And if I wake up feeling one way, I can almost promise I'll be feeling a different way. And it's like, it's kind of just what's going on right now, right?
Yeah. And I think that it's a huge learning curve for anyone who hasn't spent how many months indoors? Which is, a lot of people. So it's like, how do you navigate that space?
Well, let's talk about that. So what impact do you think the current times and the self-isolation has had on the creation of your music?
Well, I was very lucky because the initial kind of COVID time coincided with like mixing and mastering. So that was a huge learning curve for me to really sit down and listen to every single sound and decide how it needs to be tweaked just a tiny bit on the harmonic scale to sound exactly how you want it to. And that's so important. It could mean a song just no one understands it, or it brings it completely to life. And having the time during COVID has kind of made things like that come into focus and get much, much more attention. And I've really, really appreciated that. As for like the getting out of your head, going crazy, coming up with new fantastical ideas out of the atmosphere, that is not easy. And I was actually just thinking today, what sort of older original practices do I have for my inspiration and creativity that I can pull out the bag? And I've started doing that, which is really, really helping.
And what are some of those? Because I think one of the things that's been interesting to me is asking people what new or surprising forms of like coping or self-care have emerged during this time that kind of surprise people. But let's talk about the professional creativity component of that. So what have you been going back to?
One of the fundamental parts of my songwriting practice is the stream of consciousness writing. They're called morning pages. And I think I got this from The Artist's Way, which is a pretty common, well-known book. And I love that because it always surprises me. So I'll start writing and I'll kind of get a little exhaustion period after the first paragraph, and I'll let myself take a moment and then just carry on. And it's interesting how you can kind of almost mold your mind in these different directions. You can be like, okay, mind, go crazy, or okay, mind, like go super negative, or like, okay, mind, now that we've done all those things, just go completely loopy. And, you know, at the end of that, you throw it all away. It feels really good. And then you can start writing.
I like starting the day that way because I think often we don't realize that whatever we first immerse ourselves in when we start the day could kind of really be taken forward, and people jump right on their phones and you don't know what kind of drama or negativity you're going to encounter. So I love that you're holding the space. It's an honest moment you're writing. So something you said, and this was actually a really funny moment. So I was listening to your music and I was at home and I was doing my thing because, you know, Get Paid and Warrior right now are on repeat in my home. Okay. And I read the quote that you said, your music is designed to have the same effect at home as it does on a dance floor. And I had that moment where I was like, this is true. Because I was sitting there like dancing around reading articles about you.
Oh, because that's interesting because, you know, you obviously don't write a piece of music in the club.
Right.
And when I was writing, I was trying to create a certain energy for myself. I was pregnant at the time, and I needed to feel invincible and free and myself and grounded in the kind of almost tribal earthiness of my sort of power, my female power, and trying to keep myself on a mental state that was uplifting and fearless, because becoming a mom is like terrifying. Becoming a mom whilst holding down a full-time career, terrifying. All of these things point to being a superwoman. Like, I don't even have like a huge amount of family around me. And so I needed the music to do what it did to me when I was little, which is transport me and take me to a place where everything is like not only okay, but just like very out of this world.
Stunningly said, though, because I think that's where music meets mental health often is it can reflect back the mood you're in, or it can lift you up and put you in a different space. But like you kind of just said, it can also keep you company. So how do you manage motherhood, COVID, and a career?
Well, I was writing that down in my morning pages this morning. You're not supposed to share your morning pages.
No
But I'm
one's
going to.
listening.
And
It's just
no,
hundreds of
of
thousands
course,
of people.
throw that away. I was literally like writing like, how am I supposed to do this? And I actually just get so much help. I get so much help. I delegate as many things that aren't my direct kind of expertise out as I can, including supporting me. I'm not really qualified to support myself because I am already me and completely nuts. So I go against the first instinct to sort of battle through something, and I just go, help. And I've learned that over, you know, trying to set goals that are completely unbelievable, and then, you know, you try and make them work. And of course, you need help. Collaboration is key. Explaining unapologetically that you can't do it is very important, to communicate to someone how they can help you, and getting used to it. And it's not, and just getting used to the sensation of like thinking like, am I a weak person? Should I be doing this by yourself? And then feeling that like moment when someone actually does help you and you're like, hell no, why would I do this by myself? That's crazy. That's boring and also self-indulgent.
And it's such, I know you're from the UK, but in America, it's such an American value to try to do everything on your own, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I'm always trying to say, we can also think more community based. We can think more of a collective, like let's move more towards that. So I like that you're inherently allowing that. That's good.
Yeah. And I know that people struggle with asking for help.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you want to get better at it, you can find someone you know who is also bad at asking for help and watch them and notice when you think that they need help.
I like
and you'll
that.
start to learn about what it is that you do. And like, if you break through their thing of not being able to ask you for help from a place of understanding, then there's all sorts of learning going on. So I've been doing that with like other new mums, for example. And I'll be like, you need me. And then you just wait. And then they'll be like, no, I need you right now. I'm like, I'm coming, darling. I was already ready with my bag.
That's beautiful. So I have a question I've been dying to ask someone who understands two different markets, and it kind of ties into something else you were saying about your music. So, your music is very much a hybrid. It doesn't, as you claimed, meet mainstream expectations, and I think that's why people love your music. So is there really such a huge difference between UK dance music and American dance music? Because I know that sometimes I found out they've released tracks only in one country and not in the other.
Yes, but in around the world, the genre of dance music, mainstream dance music, is very narrow compared to the dance music that's out there. So, for example, in the UK, there's lots of different types of dance music that over the years have kind of fallen by the wayside because they were never categorized as mainstream dance music, like drum and bass, like grime is like categorized as hip hop, but it's actually kind of dance music. House and garage never really crossed over to America. But then dance music, house music, techno was created in Chicago and Detroit, then came over to Europe, and since then has been completely forgotten in terms of its roots. So then you have the whole kind of European idea of dance music that's sort of classified as white music.
Right.
And so it's fascinating. I just was kind of like, when I was really starting to look at like why it's such a challenge to navigate dance music as a Black person, I was like, what's going on? You've got people saying this type of dance music is not influenced by that type of dance music, and it's like, I don't really understand. It's all very segregated, and so there is a big difference. I think that in the US, EDM kind of became the main association with dance music, and then in Europe you have people kind of held on to the classics, house and techno, and things like that. And so a lot of American artists who want to make that type of music will go and tour in Europe, and then the Europeans will deny that dance music was created in America. It's very fun, wonderful.
What a world. What a world. And then quickly before we let you go, what are your thoughts about returning to live shows and performance? How safe do you feel about that? How do you think it might be different? What do you think is going to be new?
Well, I have high expectations for the live show circuit, not about health and safety, because that is pretty much a given. We're going to do everything we can to make it healthy and safe within our knowledge and power. But I'm looking for more diversity and sort of racial unity in the festival lineups and in the supporting of the festival goers, and on digital streaming platforms where it's kind of, the live show play sort of curators are looking to the playlists to find out what people are going to enjoy when they go to these festivals. So I'm doing lots of kind of behind the scenes work, and I've got high hopes. And there's a lot of work to do because these are systems in place that are racially segregated. So it's about education, then it's about working out what solutions will work and what won't work, and then it's about trying things. And it's a lot of action. There's a lot of action to be taken. There's nothing passive about it. There's no win just saying like, yeah, no, I totally agree with you that it would be a great idea. It's like, no, you actually have to do something, because things have been the same way for a very, very long time and virtually set in stone to the point of, if we decide that actually dance music, mainstream dance music should encompass Afrobeats and dance hall, like how do we do that in the technical back end of things? And how do we do that with the mental shift of like, how do we embrace new things into a genre that seems so clearly defined?
Well said. Well said. I'm looking forward to all the necessary changes. More to come. Aluna, Renaissance is out. Thank you for being a part of our show, and stay safe out there.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Be well. always good to learn more about the history of music and also just to look at the impact that music can have on us. It can both elevate us, it can drop us down. So use music as a way to kind of enhance that mood. All right, we're going to go to our next guest, David M. Schoelen, LCSW, and the Behavioral Health Services Administrator. How are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing fine, Dr. Chris. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into some stuff. I was looking at statistics, always a little daunting and a little dark at times, especially right now. We feel like we got enough on our hands. One of the things that stood out to me was in looking at suicide rates. Suicide rates have increased in the past decade, especially for young adults. What do you make of that?
Well, I think some recent influences look at how social media and social networking over a course of time has had a greater influence on how we interact with one another. We are social beings, and so our need to connect and to have a biological connection with other people is salient. And yet we were never really kind of programmed to evolutionarily have this degree of attention on ourselves at all times. So I think that can be really hard to navigate for anybody, but especially if you're a young person and you're kind of immersed in it, you're surrounded in it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. You're the first guest that has directly brought up social media, and I think it's one of the most under-acknowledged mental health factors that we have right now. I mean, I was sharing that when I put my phone down, it will sometimes tell me how many hours I spent on it, which is horrifying. But when you look at the volume of hours, we have to be looking at how that directly impacts mental health.
Yeah, I think it means that we're always plugged in, but we're not always connected. People present a certain ideal of who they want other people to see them as in their social media context. But also, when I was growing up, if I was bullied, I could always go home or I could find my immediate circle, my immediate tribe, and they kind of shielded me from that. But if I'm always plugged in into a world that is primarily anonymous, I can't get away from it.
Yeah.
And if I'm feeling that connected to it, that I can't leave it alone, that I'm going to be missing out on something if I don't have it with me, then I can't escape it. It's always with me.
Yeah. And that's why I think we need more social media literacy, right? Because for some, it's a beautiful tool to stay connected, to build community, to not feel so marginalized. But then for others, we kind of doom scroll and we use it against ourselves. So what are the factors you zero in on or talk most about when we talk about how to improve mental health?
I think, in my early training, one of my clinical supervisors, I think, said it really well when I was working on how do I help work with a client in their goaling? How do I work with a client on the pace of treatment regarding that goal? And he said, well, how do you get your therapeutic needs met, David? Everybody has therapeutic needs, whether you're in therapy or not, we all have them. And so I began listing off things that I have in my life to be able to help either cope, like I was a prolific writer, and so it was a way of being able to process my feelings, to being able to go to people I trusted to seek their opinion or their advice or their support, to then having things that created joy in my life, being able to look at my creative outlets and my hobbies or my spirituality. And it was those things that completed my life. It was creating life as opposed to reacting to life. So if I were to look at ways of being able to help people feel empowered regarding making their life more therapeutically whole, I would look at what are those things in their life that allow them to create life, to feel like they're in the driver's seat where they can still experience joy and connection.
Oh, I love that. Create life. But joy and connection, me and you are definitely aligned because those are the two factors I keep trying to bring up as well. There's a lot of heavy, dark things happening. We're not trying to deny that, but we're also recognizing that you can find some joy and pleasure amongst all that's going on around us. And in fact, our mental health requires that. So let's talk a little bit about special populations. People maybe from the LGBTQIA population, they might not necessarily always feel connected. They might not feel like they have community. What are the mental health needs that we want to really zero in on with those populations?
I am a gay man, and I am now a gay man of a certain age. And so I got my history to rely upon in addition to my academia. And I always tell folks, I wish when I was 19 years old, somebody would have pulled me aside and helped me understand Myers' theory of minority stress, because it would have made complete sense to me and that I wasn't going crazy in my life, that I was experiencing this additional level of stress that I wasn't consciously aware of. One of those things, some of that is on the surface, things that we anticipate like discrimination or prejudice, but other things are a little bit more internal, like the stress of concealment. In what environments do I have to hide who I am? Who do I have to hide myself from? Am I vigilant towards who understands who I am and who is kind of sizing me up and have they figured me out? That degree of vigilance at all times puts me in a different mode, in a different space. The other is anticipated rejection. So if I am going to come out to somebody, or if I'm going to identify myself to somebody, there are some folks who aren't going to accept that very well, and others who may embrace me. But I have to essentially size it up. I have to make a hypothesis and guess at whether or not I'm going to be rejected or not. Like if I'm at the water cooler, do I mention that I went out that weekend with my husband, or do I just say I went out that weekend? So it's figuring out how other people might react. And the fourth element of that is internalized negative messaging. But I always tell people I wasn't raised as a straight man. I wasn't raised as a gay man. I was raised as a straight one. And so all of those dominant cultural messages regarding what it means to be gay, especially that could even be applied generationally or regionally or within one's faith community, you add all of those together and we internalize those. Those become the popular messaging that help define who we are. And if I don't consciously address those, it's like in my own journey, I had to consciously address issues regarding my faith and issues regarding my masculinity before I could accept and fully resolve negative messages regarding being a gay person. So I think it's that same journey, whether you're coming out when you're 12 or whether you're coming out when you're 50. You have to kind of look at those messages and find where you fit in the middle of them and still ascertain a healthy identity of who you are.
Wow, beautifully said. And I want to, just put a little pressure on our hetero-identified listeners that, homophobia, transphobia, all these things are created and sustained by, the heterosexual world, and everyone can play a role in trying to dismantle some of those pressures that you just talked about.
Well, and we internalize those within the LGBT community ourselves. So even though that may originally came from an outsider's perspective of who we are and how we define ourselves, we have internalized those in many cases. And we were raised with those messages. And so in some cases, you'll see internal infighting within community. Some of my trans friends say some of the biggest or most difficult circumstances they had to face were from gay men or from lesbian women who were cisgendered. But, we're all in this same community with these series of letters, yet each one of those letters is a separate community. And so without having a consciousness regarding perpetuating that internally, it's also kind of self-fulfilling in some ways, but that we keep damaging each other instead of being able to create that kind of greater safety within our community.
Oh, I love the way you just said that. Anyone that feels, marginalized and exploited, community is what they most need. So let's make community actually safe for people to participate in. I love that. And just before we close out, are there any other factors you're worried about right now, whether it's tied to the politics of what's happening, COVID, in terms of mental health?
I think all of it. We live in a gestalt. Every little moment that's going on at the same time factors into how we experience the world and we experience ourselves. But with COVID in particular, with LGBT communities, especially people who are dependent upon others, whether that's because of youth or because of income or because you lost your job, in environments where you're not out or because you are out and that's punished, if that's at home, you now really have fewer places to escape and receive support. So if I'm sequestered at home, if I'm on a lockdown at home and my parents don't accept me for who I am, that just raises the tension for that particular family, for that particular child, that in the past they may have been able to let some of that pressure and steam go by going out into the community or hanging out with friends or even going to school or to work if those environments were more supportive. And now those are shut down in most cases. So I think it's also recognizing that LGBT youth in particular, or LGBT dependents in particular, may be actually at increased risk during this time period if their support system was not within their own household.
Wow, bam, beautifully said. David M. Schoelen, thank you so much for being a part of our show.
Thank you for having me.
Have a beautiful night. All right, so we got to look around and pay attention to the impact we're having on those around us. Many marginalized and exploited individuals need the support of the larger population, but also we have to support those in our own communities, whatever that community or identity might be. See how you can help those around us. For those that need more resources, we're going to put some up after the show. We'll be back next week, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can check out past episodes on all the radio.com handles. As always, thanks for hanging out, and you all have a beautiful, beautiful night.